Can we solve our mental health crisis by providing safe and effective deliveries of psychedelic pharmaceutical medicines? Yeah, let's talk about that.
On winning arguments, we're teaching the basic fundamentals of sales and marketing and how we can use them to win in the world of politics, teaching you how to meet people where they're at on the issues they care about. Welcome to The Brian Nichols Show.
Well, happy Tuesday there, folks. Brian Nichols here on The Brian Nichols Show. Thank you for joining us on, of course, another fun-filled episode. I am, as always, your humble host, joining you live from our Stratus IP studio here in lovely Eastern Indiana. Don't let cyber attacks or outdated business technology put your company at risk. Learn more at briannicholsshow.com/Stratus IP. Stratus IP, business technology simplified. Yeah, well, let's talk about the idea, folks, for today's episode of being able to address our mental health issues. And frankly, it's a crisis that we're facing here in America, but let's address it in a different way. We talk about here on the show addressing problems at the root of their causes versus trying to address symptoms. So today we're going to be focusing specifically how we can go ahead and address mental health using, in this case, psychedelic medicines, but also making them in the world of pharmaceuticals. But before we get there, I'm going to go ahead and give a shout out to today's sponsor, and that is the Libertarian Party of Illinois, folks. The mission of the Libertarian Party of Illinois is to elect libertarians to public office and to move public policy in a libertarian direction. The LP of Illinois believes that everyone owns themselves and that no bureaucrat knows better than you what you need or what you want. Heck, maybe like psychedelic pharmaceuticals. But when peaceful people engage in voluntary cooperation, the most number of people are served. And if you agree with that message, help us restore liberty up in Illinois at lpillinois.org and help bring back peace and liberty to both Illinois and the United States in our lifetimes. One more time, lpillinois.org. All right, so yeah, let's talk about psychedelics. I can't do it by myself today. Joining me from Psycheceutical, Chad Harman. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Brian. Pleasure to be here. And you said it on point. I love it.
Love it. See, the audience doesn't get to appreciate, Chad, the stuff that we do behind the scenes. And behind the scenes, I went through saying the name Psycheceutical about 7 times to make sure I got it right, because I am the product of government education. So unfortunately, I was more focused on learning God knows what arts and crafts than I was trying to learn the English language. So forgive me. I'm sorry, guys, but it took me a little time, but thankfully I got it right the first time. Chad, you're doing amazing work over at Psycheceutical, and you're helping address mental health. And it is specifically an issue right now that we are facing in America. It is at all-time crisis levels, and truly crisis levels, after you watch what just happened over the past 3 years. Folks being locked in their homes and being told, well, sorry, you're unessential, business is shut down, kids watching their entire futures completely destroyed, all on the whims of some government bureaucrats. Now, that's all obviously conversations for a different podcast. But Chad, you're addressing right now where we see mental health being a main crisis point, a different way of doing things. We like that here in the show. Talk to us about the approach you're taking over at Psycheceutical.
Yeah, I mean, going back to those stats, certainly, coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, 1 out of 5 Americans experience mental illness each year. But in what some of our medical advisory board members, some of the doctors we've spoken to all around the U.S., and certainly with one of our own, Dr. Julian Bales, who's on the board of the NCAA, he says it's more like 1 in 3. It's such a staggering number, and we can even point to a number of comorbidity issues now. We're starting to see where, cardiovascular disease from depression, anxiety, PTSD are really starting to take heart. And we're seeing much more of those disease states start to take root, if you will. So for us, what we've seen, even prior to engaging in psychedelics, there's been decades of research that have shown that psychedelic medicines have powerful potential for life-saving mental health treatment. However, for widespread adoption, psychedelic medicines need to be delivered in the same way pharmaceuticals do with targeted control. Hence the name Psycheceutical. We're bringing the best of pharmaceuticals with psychedelics, right? So Psycheceutical. So we at Psycheceutical, we're a biopharmaceutical company bringing a much needed focus on precision dosing technology to the mental health industry. Our mission, Brian, is to develop safer, more effective tools for combating the mental health and addiction crisis we face today coming out of the pandemic. And even, right, we can make the argument before the pandemic.
So it was back in, I told you, I can't remember the date. I was actually looking here as we were off camera. I can't remember the date. It was our friends over at Microdose. It was either 2020 or 2021. Darn you, COVID, messing up with my concept of time. But we joined our friends there and we hosted a panel and we talked about the use of psychedelics. And we talked specifically in that panel about our friends over in the armed services, and our friends also who served overseas are now facing PTSD and all sorts of other demons that they brought back over when they came home. So we saw, and this goes hand in hand with the overall general conversation about mental health, that has become a just tragic epidemic that I don't think is nearly getting enough airtime that it needs to be getting. And frankly, that's why I was so honored to hold that panel and to be able to speak to a lot of vets, frankly, who are going out and dealing with this every single day, not just themselves, but with their cohorts that they served with overseas and now coming home and having to face those demons. That's the hardest part for them, and being able to find solutions. So I know that we were talking about some solutions in that case, but are you seeing right now maybe any interest from our friends in the veteran community who are looking for some alternatives using psychoceuticals?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing, case in point, one of our competitors in the industry, Darren Carcillo. He's leading up a company on traumatic brain injury, and he's got a lot of individuals that are in the veteran community that's supporting him in his efforts. And we're seeing more veteran, especially at the conferences, more veteran various organizations come and support and really start to get engaged, not only at the grassroots level of local cities and communities, but, states, and now at the government level. They're really pushing it up and really starting to hear their voice at the congressional level. So, they're at the heart of what we do. As I mentioned, my father is a former Vietnam veteran. My grandfather was World War II, and my great-grandfather was World War I. So they're at the heart of who we are at Psycheceutical. Many of us here have family or friends or loved ones that have been in the military, and we hold them near and dear to our heart. And obviously, they're our first line of defense as a nation. So, we want to honor and protect them and know that we want them to come back in a safe environment where they can come back and heal and be reintroduced into society, be productive members.
Now, we could talk about maybe not sending our friends overseas, but that's a whole, again, other conversation for a different podcast. But thank you for, addressing a very real problem, Chad. And let's also talk about, I guess, the uphill battle you're facing, because this is something I'm sure half the audience is looking at and listening to with a raised eyebrow. Like, I'm old enough to remember when it was determined, it was fact, that marijuana killed your brain cells. I remember seeing that study. And by the way, that study, it was done on monkeys where they were pumping them with THC and gas masks. They literally suffocated the monkeys to death. And what ended up happening was the brain damage that the monkeys received wasn't from the THC. It was from the lack of oxygen, which, believe it or not, when you don't have oxygen going to the brain, you might suffer some brain damage. So yeah, I'm used to the propaganda. I think a lot of us are used to the propaganda, but let's be real, Chad. A lot of folks out there, they're still weary about this stuff. Like, they hear psychedelics and they instantly just think of the scene in Tenacious D and the Pick of Destiny where Jack Black is floating down the magic mushroom river where rainbows and unicorns are everywhere, and he's talking to Papageno the Sasquatch. So, I mean, how are you approaching those folks who are just so vehemently against this idea of using psychedelics in our medicine, specifically in the world of pharmaceuticals?
Yeah, great question. One that we're facing as an industry. And what we're doing is we're showing, very viable clinical results as a result of several clinical trials being in the phase 2 and phase 3, where we're now starting to dose patients. But even beyond that, what we saw even in the 50s and 60s were really remarkable results for patients dealing with, in certainly many cases, they were life-threatening illnesses where this was the only means and measure where an individual can stop the suffering and the pain that they were anguished with knowing that they have a terminal illness. And what we saw through Michael Pollan and his Netflix video was the fact that in the 50s and 60s, we had these molecules that were very profound. They were able to treat many of the mental health disorders that we're now faced with today. And we now know that, especially as a result of a recent article from a university out of London that showed our traditional treatment methodology with SSRIs and the serotonin receptors being, the result of where the predominantly issues reside. That is completely false. That narrative has been disproven. And now we really have to take a look back and say, what is the data showing? What are the clinical results showing? Well, now with phase 2 in human and phase 3 trials with MAPS, with Compass Pathways, they're tremendous results, and the data shows conclusively that it is in a therapeutic sense overcoming a lot of those depression, anxiety, PTSD disorders where previously it's 20 to 30% with traditional SSRIs and cognitive behavioral therapy. So the data doesn't lie, right? And that's what I would point to.
It's tough in this industry, I'm sure. Not just facing folks who have stigma, but also you're facing a lot of uphill battle when it comes to the legal battles that you're going to be facing. I'm sure you have been facing. And we talk about this all the time in terms of the way we approach solutions here at the show. The reason, and this isn't necessarily the reason, but fundamentally a reason we've taken such a niche where we're talking not just to our Liberty friends, but also specifically your business owners, your entrepreneurs, is that we see that in order to get your ideas into action, right? What's the most effective means to do so? And by and large, with almost zero exceptions, you're going to find that that's going to be in the private sector, using something in the free market space. And when government sets these rules that they do not just go away, they're there forever, they put roadblocks in the way for very well-intentioned and well-suited individuals in the free market who are trying to address these problems from being able to do so. Now, I see that as an issue because it's keeping folks from actually innovating, having real solutions to the problems we see out there, number one. But number two, the other issue I see is that it keeps bad ideas and bad solutions in place. It embraces and solidifies the status quo, which as a sales guy, Chad, I am vehemently against. So talk to us about that. How are you facing that over at Psycheceutical?
Yeah, so, again, what the predominant issues that we're facing as an industry are certainly some of the known side effects, right? We're considering these profound psychogenic effects, right? We've got nausea, we have vomiting, right? In terms of an overall sales pitch, right? Those are things that, individuals really, for most of us, do not want to experience, right? That's traumatic in itself. And so at Psycheceutical, what we're doing and what we created our company around is, having very profound, remarkable delivery technologies to alleviate a lot of those concerns. So up until now, there have been significant medical and really technological limitations, keeping psychedelics from being safe, effective, and certainly widely accessible. So again, we wanted to deliver these, not in the traditional, hey, take, 2 caps and a stem and tell me how you feel and go experience that. We truly wanted to target a control and wanted to, really give the patients the comfort knowing that they're going to be delivering a dosage form that is widely acceptable and that's going to give them the best experience possible but also it's going to give the FDA, certainly the DEA, right? Because we're dealing with the DEA, that these molecules are Schedule 1, meaning they have no medicinal value. So we need to show to the regulatory bodies that these are safe and effective, and they can be targeted for control. And certainly, we believe with our patented technologies that we've solved the dosing problem, where we can alleviate a lot of the psychogenic effects, so that we can increase the user adoption to, adolescents, right, who need these, right? Going back to your earlier point in the top of the hour, we're talking about individual or adolescents at school where they're wearing the mask. They're not, they're 6 feet separated from their classmates. You can't touch them. You're not having that intimate touch that we know that is very valuable to humans, right? So now you're incorporating that sector of the population. You're also incorporating the elderly population who really don't want that psychogenic, very profound effect, right? Because of some of the other conditions that they're dealing with. So we at Psychedelics are really bridging the gap of bringing everybody into the mainstream by providing a solution of targeted control without the side effects. And we're also, taking a tract, if you will, an approach with the FDA, saying, hey, we're really targeted. We're really focusing on alleviating a lot of those concerns. So that's what we're doing at Psycheceutical.
Talk to us about the future, and let's maybe get outside of the world of mental health, because, and not that I don't want to talk about mental health, but I think we've spent a lot of time here. And I think there's also other areas that we're finding that the psychedelics are having a lot of success in helping in terms of being alternatives to your traditional pharmaceutical medicines. Can you speak more about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing, tremendous progress with, multiple sclerosis, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, even traumatic brain injury, CTE, right? Those are the areas that we're seeing, tremendous positive results outside of traditional mental health, right? And even we can relate it back to aging, Brian. Again, going back to one of our doctors, Dr. Thomas Cabell, he's a cardiologist out of Nashville, and he is a big proponent that a lot of mental health disorders and even neurological and cardiovascular issues stem from mental health disorders. So we're seeing that if we can attack the problem at its root, which a lot of it stems from mental health disorders that then go into neurological and cardiovascular, and again going back into aging issues. If we can attack it at the root cause, which we know based on clinical results, that these early results show that if we can combat that, then we're alleviating a lot of downstream effects as it relates to aging, neurological disorders, and cardiovascular disease states. So, those are the other areas that we're certainly focused on. And I would even point to even an article recently, as of I think a week or two, Apple put it out that an individual that was, they were, unable to walk, and they were paralyzed from the waist down. And so this individual went to a concert out in Colorado. They ingested a bunch of psilocybin mushrooms, and during the conference was starting to feel their extremities start to move again, and is now walking again and using their limbs. So again, remarkable results, and we're just starting to really understand the powerful, remarkable results of what these compounds can do.
All right, now this is the part where I get banned. I'm gonna put my tinfoil hat on, because what I feel like Peter Griffin in Family Guy, where he's like, why weren't we funding this? But let's be real. Why were these all put on the was it class 1 substance list?
Schedule 1. Yep.
Schedule 1, excuse me. Yeah. But why? If were people just that afraid of not knowing, or dare I say the conspiracy hat comes on? Are there possibly nefarious, reasons for these drugs, psychedelics, being classified and scheduled this way? I mean, goodness, we just saw what happened over the past few years with the pharmaceutical reach in terms of their ability to influence not just government officials, but also anybody in media. I mean, goodness gracious, it became a joke. Every commercial, before the commercials would go, any news segment, it would end with "brought to you by Pfizer." Like you saw that was what just happened over the past 2 years. Man, I mean, go back 100 years. Is it possible this all happened before? And that's why, like, they knew this stuff worked. They just try to hide it.
Yeah, that's a very taboo subject, right? So, especially somebody in this industry. But what I will say is certainly that the data for many years has supported. But I would even go back to, even looking back at in marijuana, which I had the fortune and opportunity of being in for several years, and looking back in the early 20s, and what was our pharmacia at that point in time? What compounds we work with? We worked a lot of in marijuana. It was very powerful and profound on many elements across the board. It was kind of almost the cure-all, catch-all, right? And then suddenly we ran up against legislative, or what I would say the DEA at that point in time, which was really adamant about alcohol use, right? Well, once the powers that be started supporting alcohol, and we legalized it, well, then you had a whole bureaucracy in a federal body that now had to advocate for themselves and their positions, right? So then, hence, here comes the propaganda against marijuana. And again, fast forward to the 50s and 60s, we were seeing that it was taking a whole movement of so-called hippies from the 50s and 60s and really starting to go against the establishment of anti-war. Right now, you're having these hippies that are having these profound experiences, and they're saying, "Hey, wait a minute, maybe war is not good. Why are we truly in Vietnam at this point in time?" And that was against, government, right? That was going against big government. So then you had, the establishment saying, all right, we're going to reschedule these. These are drugs that, again, going to the propaganda, it's frying the brain. Then you had the 80s where we had the rise of the SSRIs coming into focus, right, from big pharma. But then you had the war on drugs, right? You had the Reagan administration that really pushed forward and said, hey, we really need to take a hard stance on these drugs. They're molding and shaping and ruining our adolescent and those individuals that are exploring, and obviously having the crack and cocaine epidemic during that time. So, to your point, Brian, you're going up against, federal regulations, you're going up against big business, and it's a perfect storm. And where I think we're at now is we're reaching a precipice as a society where we're seeing this global truth that says, should we have lockdown? Should we have taken the stance that we should have? Given the data, again, I always love to go back. A lot of my leadership and how I ran businesses were surrounding data and statistics. How do we measure and monitor the success of an organization, and how do we achieve a corporate strategy? Well, you need data and statistics. And so, taking a step back, looking at COVID, we're seeing that 99.7% of the population was unaffected by COVID. And when I mean unaffected, I mean we weren't seeing the death rates and that we were supposed to see, right? And so that approach then it goes back into, how much was that government overreach, and how much of it is we as a society taking back the reins and starting to say, hey, you know what, we have true compounds that can fix these issues, like psychedelics that can address these mental health issues coming out of it. So I know that's a long-winded answer. It's a very complex issue, but I think they're very targeted and focused to, where we need to address these. And I think we as a society are doing that. And certainly we as Psychoceutical are on the forefront of addressing those issues.
Well, if there's one thing as we go towards final thoughts today, I'll start things off here, Chad. And that is over the past 2 years or maybe the past 20 minutes, if anything you have learned, it is to, in fact, question everything. So with that, head over to briannicholsshow.com/shop, where you can go ahead and get your own question anything or everything bumper sticker. Yeah, question anything, no, question everything bumper sticker. And these make great Christmas gifts, by the way, folks. I know Christmas is right around the corner. It's just about a month away. So if you're going to go ahead and look for a gift for that liberty fanatic in your life who is looking to, in fact, question everything, go to briannicholsshow.com/shop. Go check out our friends over at Proud Libertarian and do yourself a favor. Use code TBNS at checkout. And of course, continue to question everything. Chad, what do you have for us for final thoughts today?
Yeah, I just want to leave your listeners with a message of hope that we are pushing forward towards legalization. We are, we're going to provide, we know we are going to provide a viable solution to the mental health crisis. And even, again, to neurological disorders, we hold great promise there as well. And in terms of, other comorbidities, we're going to have a solution that we're going to bring to the market, and something that's going to be safe and effective for the users. And, I would love for your audience to continue to follow us and support us in the message of getting these very profound, remarkable molecules through the approval process. And we look forward to helping those that enjoy your show so much, Brian.
Perfect. Chad, thank you very much for joining us today. And folks, if you enjoyed today's episode, well, you know the drill. Please go ahead, give today's episode a share. And when you do, please go ahead and tag yours truly at B Nichols Liberty. And also, you can go ahead and when you share today's episode, you can not only find the audio version, which I know 90% of you guys are going to be listening to the show over there. And again, anywhere you listen to your podcast, but also you can share the video version of the show, which can be found over on YouTube, on Rumble, and on Odyssey. Always have our backups there in case, which I think the backups are slowly turning into the main options as things get weirder and weirder. So please, guys, make sure you've done me a favor, hit that subscribe button, regardless where it is you go ahead and watch the video, and do me a favor as well, hit that little notification bell so you don't miss a single time we go live. So I said it at B Nichols Liberty. That's where you can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Minds.com, Truth Social, Parler. I don't know, name the website. I'm probably over there. Chad, where can folks go ahead and find you? They want to continue the conversation.
Yeah, you can find us on psycheceutical.com. We're on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We're on all those social media outlets. We are a publicly listed company, so we're listed on the OTC Pink, so you can find us under symbol BWVI or Blue Water Ventures Incorporated. We're looking to get that name and corporate symbol change here very soon with FINRA. So thanks again.
Absolutely. All right, folks. Well, if you, again, enjoyed today's episode, well, I know you're going to enjoy the episode if you're joining us here on YouTube. That is right here. I'm going to include that. That's the video that was recommended to you. And also over here next to Chad, over to your right, you're going to find another video I'm going to share. That is my conversation with Wiley Gray. He was talking about bringing a lot of solutions, again, specifically to veterans in the psychedelic space. So I met him for my team over at Microdose there when I was leading that back again, last year, 2 years ago. So I'll make sure I include that there for you guys. And if you haven't had the chance yet, hit subscribe here for the Brian Nichols Show. But with that being said, it's Brian Nichols signing off on the Brian Nichols Show for Chad Harman. We'll see you tomorrow.
For listening to the Brian Nichols Show. Find more episodes at briannicholsshow.com.